Today, me and Dave have got a little video for you on how I draw hair in graphite pencils. Hello. He doesn't want to know me today. It's because I haven't got a treat. I go through all the materials I use and all the ins and outs, and I hope you find this useful. Please subscribe, thumbs up, whatever you like. I'm just working on this commission. It's one of my biggest human portraits yet, and I thought it'd be a really nice opportunity to show you how I draw like dark shiny hair, because this little girl here has got really lovely dark hair that's reflecting the sun. So I know a lot of people do struggle with human hair. To me, I kind of look at it the same way as fur in animals. It's kind of the same technique as I've shown in my previous video of how I draw dogs in graphite. But yeah, I'm going to go through the main tools that I use, things I would really recommend you getting if you are going to start doing human portraits in graphite. So we have got, let's start with the paper. It is the, let me just get it. For this particular portrait, I'm using the Bristol board 400 because it's the one that I had in a bigger size. The 300 series is also just as good, so if you want to save yourself a bit of money, just get the yellow pad, which is the 300 series. I will link that in the description. Second thing, obviously most important, is going to be your pencils. I really recommend the Faber-Castell 9000 series. I've always used these. I do have some Caran d'Ache pencils as well. This is a HB, but the one thing I do find about the Caran d'Ache ones is that they scratch a little bit more than, like, the leads aren't as forgiving, and they can tend to make marks on the paper. Don't know why. Another must-have is these Faber-Castell mechanical pencils. Now, if you've tried a mechanical pencil before and not really got along with it, try these, because they are the artist-specific ones are they're a bit different to the classic ones you get. They're a bit more expensive, but it's all worth it. And you can get different graded leads to go in there, and they're really great for fine details. Okay, alright. This is really small because I've used it so much. I really need to get another one. It is the Faber-Castell Perfection 7000. This is it's basically a pencil with a rubber inside it. You can also get this one, which is the 7058, and that's a white version. So the white version is meant to be for graphite, and the pink version is meant to be for like oil-based or wax-based colour pencils, basically. But I actually prefer this one for both graphite and colour pencils because it tends to pick up the graphite a little bit more. And the great thing about these is that you can sharpen them to a really fine point, just using like a handheld sharpener. And I really love these to just pick up areas where there's highlights and for those flyaway hairs that we tend to get in hair, obviously. Next thing is cotton buds. These are great. I use these on the faces all the time. They're great for just softening things out, getting rid of any harsh edges. There's no harsh edges in anything in nature. So yeah, just keep that in mind. I think that's it for tools. I also sometimes use these jelly roll pens in 0.5 is my favourite one, but they dry out quite quickly, so I use the 0.8. Really nice for small highlights and fine details in highlight. And also we got just a big watercolour brush, nothing special, just a cheap one. And I use this to just brush away any rubbings out that come from using these. And these are nice because they're really soft, so they don't make any marks on your paper. You don't want to be blowing on it to get rid of the sharpenings, even though I do sometimes. Because if you get any saliva on your paper, you're going to ruin it, and the graphite is just going to stick to it. So try and avoid that where you can. Oh, and also, let me just find it. Sometimes I will actually use a black pan pastel for the dark areas, but I will only do that at the very end. The only annoying thing about that is that you have to make all the darks consistent, so you would have to use it for like the darks in the eyes, for example, and it's not really optimal for that. So I sometimes use this extra soft Faber-Castell black drawing pencil. I'll link in the description, but I can't remember what exact thing they call it. I think it's oil based, and it just gives a really dark shadow where you need it. So I'll use this for like the darkest areas in the hair, or it tends to be a really dark shadow where the hair goes behind the head here. But then again, you will have to use that to go over all of your darkest points so that it's consistent. Oh, and also this is wax based, so in order to keep the graphite shine consistent over the portrait, you will have to go, well, you don't have to, but I like to go over that dark area with a layer of graphite, just so that it all looks coherent. So let's get onto the hair now. So I've mapped out the basic directions of the hair and where this main highlight's going to be, where it's bouncing off the sun. I think I will have the reference picture in the top left, maybe, of this video, so you'll be able to see what I mean. Now I like to see it in two kind of layers, two main layers. So we've got the main bulk of the hair, which is, you're going to get like your main darks and your main highlight down, and then you've got the detail layer on top, which is where you're going to get in those flyaway hairs and all those small hair strands that you see on the very surface of that hair. So when you're mapping your hair out, be sure to kind of feel the energy of that hair and like just get an idea of what kind of environment the hair's in. If it's like blowing around, then be really loose with your strokes. And so the mistake that a lot of people make when they draw hair is to be very rigid, whereas hair by nature is free flowing. So you want to go kind of wispy at the bottom and then like a little curl it normally has, obviously looking at your reference picture as well. But you don't have to, unless it's a very specific hairstyle that your client wants you to match, you don't have to go exactly by your reference, like strand by strand. You can just use your creative license to kind of feel the energy of that person and their hair. Sounds a bit weird, feeling the energy of hair, but kind of just imagine like if you were that hair, you'd be flowing all around, you'd be flowing down and around that shoulder. If that kind of thing doesn't really resonate with you, then just forget it. But the main point I'm getting at is just don't be too rigid. So this whole bit here is in shadow, but I'm not going to emphasise that shadow too much, just because the shadow, because obviously all these photos are taken at different times with different lighting, so I'm kind of trying to make the lighting on all of them a bit more general so that they look more put together. But this little girl does have quite dark hair, so you want to make sure you're going dark enough. Another thing I see beginners doing is the paper can really affect the finished result you're getting. So if you're getting a really light result without much depth, and you can't press hard enough on your pencil without the paper kind of getting ruined, then you know that you really need to invest in a better quality paper. Because you might be thinking that it's you and you're not very good and you're not getting the results that you want, but it could just be the tools you're using, and you could be holding yourself back by not investing in your talent. So I'm just using, let me show you. Just got a bit of scrap printer paper here. So the marks that I'm making, it's kind of like, it's the exact same technique that I use for like animal fur, really. So it's hard in the middle and then kind of wisping it out, lighter pressure on the outsides, and then I'm just carrying that on in the body of the hair. So say we've got a nice curl like this, and using this technique with your pencil means that when you get to your highlighted areas, they're going to look much more natural than if you were to just have like straight lines. And it kind of gives that really strandy look rather than quite a rigid mechanic effect. Now if you're drawing dark hair, you want to be using the dark graded pencils. Don't be frightened to go too dark or use too much pressure, and that was just a really quick example, but you get the gist. And so I'm using a HB for this first layer. And don't be afraid to press, to use as much pressure as is needed to get that effect that you need. And there's a little flyaway hair here, so I'm just really loosely keeping my hand loose. Again, connecting with the energy of that hair. There's a little bit of a breeze here, so I'm trying to incorporate that into most of the photos, just to give it a bit more life. So here we have the main highlight. It's not a harsh highlight, but it is a highlight where the hair is coming over the shoulder, and that bit's going to be further forward, whereas this bit's going to be receding into the shadow. So this is where my first highlight's going to be. So I'm starting from each end, so I'm leaving the highlight white in the middle for now. And I'm just going in each end, keeping it loose. I'm not paying attention to the really fine strands of flyaway hairs just yet, but I am getting the main bulk of it down. Oh, and I've mentioned don't be afraid to go too dark, but one thing you do have to keep in mind is that if there's loads of flyaway hairs, that you need to use the rubber pencil to go over the top. You don't want to burnish the paper, because that will be really hard to get those clean rubbing outlines. So yeah, not too hard, not too light. And she's got some really lovely, I've done the shadows of those curls because the hair is going to be coming onto the arm like this, so then the shadow, because the light's coming from this direction, the shadow will be cast where that hair's hitting the arm. And that was a really nice little touch that I liked in the photo. So I've just used this little, it's called a colour shaper, I think, from Jackson's Art. You can get these in all different sizes, they're really handy for creating like a smooth shadow. So I'm just going to match up these little curls at the bottom to where they would fall according to the shadow. So that one's connecting there. Be confident with your lines, be animated. This one's very hard to describe, but hair will normally fall in, it will go wider and then it will fall, because the hair at the bottom gets thinner. It will fall into a kind of triangular shape, and this bit here I can see is going over this bit of hair here. So I'm just creating that shadow where it's all falling together there and brushing it inwards. And then there is a highlight separating that bit, so then the shadow is going to be down here. And then we've already, just from doing that, we've got these two layers of hair making it look a bit more 3D. If anyone watching these videos ever wants me to like have a look at your work, or I mean, we're always still learning, all of us are learning every time we do a drawing. But if you did want me to critique any of your drawings, or if there's something you can't work out, feel free to send me a picture of it over Instagram and I will have a look for you and hopefully give you some constructive criticism. I really do love helping people get more satisfaction when they're drawing, because I know how frustrating it is when you just can't seem to get something right. So again here I'm overlapping this bit and I'm creating a little shadow here just to kind of have that hair moving in a natural way over that shoulder. I tend to look at the reference photo the least when I'm drawing hair, whereas when I'm drawing like the faces and stuff it will be 50-50 looking at the reference to the face. But I find hair quite automatic. If you just get a feeling of the flow and then you just go into that flow state and you're connecting your brain to your hand. That's how I feel it happens anyway. And as you can see, these kind of soft lines that where your stroke gets less pressured towards the end of the stroke are really important to making that hair look like it's smooth and realistic. If there's dark hair, you want to make sure the shadow is visible, sorry, the highlight, but it's also not going to be bright white. Especially in the like half highlight areas. So I'm just going to finish this area and then I will come back to you when I'm drawing this bit, because that is where the main highlight is, and that's going to be quite an interesting thing to show you. So as you can see, I've added the flyaway strands on the top layer and I have gone in with my rubber pencil and just added some little flyaways, but I'm going to do that again right at the end. Again, one mistake that beginners tend to make when they're doing these highlights is making it a bit like square. I can't describe what I mean really, but like a bit like a stripe rather than in actuality that it's all different strands of hair that are making up that the bulk of that highlight. It's not just one big strand, if you get me. Where should I start? Okay, so I'm picking out the main shadow I can see in this section, and it's the bit where it goes behind her ear. So it is here. Just really roughly getting that in, and then she's got a little hair that comes down here. I like to start with the main highlight that I can see, because then that serves as a reference point for the midtones and the highlights. It's all about your tones. So I'm actually going to go in with the black pencil here just to really solidify that main shadow in this section. And then getting this shadow down just to put everything into context, and it helps my brain to kind of visualise it a bit better. What I'll do after I've done the hair is go over the shadowed areas with the pencil again, just to make it all consistent, as I've already said. For some reason this portrait is taking me so long. I'm just really struggling with my concentration at the moment. I'm either really focused or not at all. But we'll get there. This shadow here is where the hair is like separating and overlapping. from the break where it will go over her ear. And this section here, her sister's hair is going to be overlapping, so that won't be visible. Right, in with the HB pencil. And I'm just doing the exact same as what I did in the other area. Rendering a little bit of shadow there. Don't forget the shadow around the hair that is going to be casting on the face. Like here, it's kind of the strands are showing up on the forehead where the light is being blocked. And here. And as I say, there's never going to be a really like sharp break line between the hair and the face, because all the shadows are going to be incorporated together. So be sure to keep that in mind. So I'm not being afraid of that highlight already, I'm kind of breaking into it, making sure to get that contrast in early so that we can refine from there. The partings can be quite confusing sometimes to draw, because it's never just like a gap and then some hair. There's always hair like going over it, there's a shadow that it will cast. So again, I find with hair to feel it more than look at it. I mean, obviously you've got to really observe, and that's how you're going to learn. But I found that hair was much more enjoyable for me, and I became more quicker and more effective at doing it when I kind of just felt it rather than obsess over every single detail being the same. And again, there's another break in the hair here where there's going to be a shadow. And the hair it's not just going straight down like that in a diagonal, it's going around the skull. So I'm really curving those lines. And the shape of the skull can really affect that person's character. It's probably not something you really think about when you're looking at someone, but the shape of their head is quite important. Working in like triangles. What I mean by triangles is I'm actually standing up so I can get different angles. You know I'm getting into something when I stand up. But yeah, it's beneficial to get some different angles rather than just being rigid, sitting down. Helps you to curve your wrist at different angles. Using my hardest pressure where it goes behind the ear, because there's going to be less light hitting that area. In this specific picture anyway. Even in that really bright highlight there's some strands, but I tend to just get the darkest shadows down first and then the midtones, and then leave that highlighted area really bright for now. Don't be afraid to be a bit crazy with your lines. I'm basically working side on right now so that I can get this curve going this way. And what I'm leaning on here is just some acid-free, it's the paper that separates pastel paper. Oh, I can't remember what it's called now. If I remember what it's called, I'll link I'll link a pad of it in the description. But I basically just get loads of it when I order pastel paper. So I just reuse it because it's perfect for if you're going to be selling your work. It's important to get stuff that's acid free, even if it's just something you're leaning on. All of these little things are going to affect how long that drawing will last, especially graphite. It's quite it's a medium that can fade if it's in sunlight quite quickly. So if you are doing commissions for your clients, be sure that they know that graphite is a medium that can fade but it can also last a very long time if it's treated correctly, so not hanging it in a place which has direct sunlight. I got some little information sheets printed that I put in my commissions, just outlining what can happen if it is placed in areas like bathrooms or conservatories or places that get really direct heat and sunlight. It will fade quicker. You can minimise this by getting professional frames with UV Protect glass. I do include a frame with this service, just because I don't like to send drawings out to be framed by the customer, because I don't know, it's a bit nice if you just don't have to deal with all of that, like you don't have to have the worry of them touching the graphite. So I usually do just send it in a frame, just a standard frame from, I get a lot of my frames from the range. They're affordable and they're made of glass, which is nice. There's also some nice ones from IKEA which have a plastic panel rather than a glass panel, and they can be really nice for sending if you're going to send it abroad or if you're sending a larger piece. But then I also offer a professional framing service, where I will get my local framer to frame, and that's at an additional cost. So you can always give your clients these options. It's good to put that on your website as well if you have one. Change to the other side now, standing up. And that's another point about the paper actually. These cheap papers are usually not archival, which means they will contribute to the pencil fading faster. It's fine for practice pieces, but it's not really good practice to be sending that to paying clients. So it's only going to reflect badly on you. As you can see, I can render hair texture really quite quickly now. This is only on a very small scale, mind you, which is why it seems to be coming together quite quickly, but I am actually a very slow worker normally. I like to use most of my time with human portraiture to really get that likeness. And the details are just the cherry on top, really. So we've got in the main highlight area there. So what I would do now is use the cotton bud just to kind of get rid of that graininess from the paper, make it a bit more smooth. Just smoothing out that pencil mark, and then we're going to add those strandy textures again with the mechanical pencil, which is really thin and precise. So we've got a 0.7 Faber-Castell mechanical pencil. I believe the lead in this is a 2B. And I'm going to really pick up on those slight shadowed strands and what direction they will be going in. Still keeping the placing of that main highlight the same. but I'm breaking into it a bit more now with this thinner lead. Kind of stroking it back and forth, using that varying pressure at the end of each stroke. Change sides again so I can get it from this angle. Remember to breathe. Whenever I get into small details, I realise I haven't breathed for like 30 seconds. But again, I'm not being too precious with this either, even though it is the small details. Keeping it loose. Change sides again, going back and forth from one side to the other. Add in a few flyaways. Where the hairline is, there's usually quite a few little flyaway hairs. Reinforcing this darker shadow at the top. And blend. So what I usually do is I'll get the shadows and highlights down in graphite, and then I will reinforce those shadows. Remember, the reference is there to be just that, a reference. If you try to copy every single hair strand, which is what I used to obsess over, you will be there for weeks and weeks. And I find the whole thing has a better energy if you kind of just go with the flow. So I've done a bit more shadow, and now I'm going back in with that mechanical pencil. Add some more strands. Just breaking up any large areas of highlight. If you were drawing lighter hair, the highlight would be wider, usually. But the sun is hitting the head on quite a specific area. I'm really highlighting how healthy and shiny that hair is, so we want to capture that. And there we have the main bit down now. Just blurring that out a bit. Here I'm using my colour shaper to just unsharpen the edges. And I will now go in with the rubber pencil. If I can find it. It's impossible to find because it's so small. Oh, no. Alright, I'll probably be back in about an hour once I've found it. You've just time travelled, it's been about half an hour and I still can't find it. So I'm just going to use the white one instead. It's just as good. Sharpen it to a really fine point. Just with a handheld metal sharpener. So as you can see there, we've managed to get a really sharp point. And this is going to be really handy to get those little flyaways. I'm going to zoom in. So we've got our rubber pencil, and I can see a little flyaway where the hair is coming in from the front there, and it's just as simple as doing that. If you haven't used one of these rubber pencils, I really recommend trying one. I don't want to emphasise the wind too much. But it does just add that element of realism. And I'm just picking out some little strands. Really bringing that highlight back to life again. And then we go back in with the mechanical pencil. It really is just about going back and forward, pulling things forward, pushing things back. And working from basic to detailed. Where the flyaways come into their hair here, I like to add a little shadowed hair here where it's not coming over that darker bit and getting highlighted, just so it all looks a bit more seamless. Oh, I really wish I had my pink one. It's really annoying. The pink one's just a little bit better at making quite definite lines, and the thing I don't like about the white one is that you have to keep rubbing it off on stuff because it collects graphite on the end and then it can smudge it. Dropping pencils is literally the bane of my life. Coming together a bit more now. I feel like it's a bit choppy at the moment. So I'm going to go in with my colour shaper. Smooth everything out. I'm just going to sharpen my black pencil because I'm going to go in with the darkest darks now. Sharpen that to a really fine point. Starting from the parting here. Adding in this black pencil is just going to ramp up that contrast and make everything look a bit more appealing to the eye. Some people also use charcoal, but I find that gets a bit smudgy for my liking. Oh yeah, and here's some pictures of the final piece and the frame I chose, and I put some flowers and some ribbon on it just as like some gift wrap because it was a more memorial portrait. The client was really happy with it. So, and here's a little bonus for you. It's an iguana in a Christmas jumper.